How does a global superpower, with unmatched wealth, technology, and military might, lose a war to a guerrilla force armed with makeshift weapons and sheer determination? The Vietnam War, one of the most controversial and divisive conflicts of the 20th century, is a story of resilience, miscalculation, and the limits of power. From 1954 to 1975, the United States poured its resources into Vietnam, determined to halt the spread of communism. Yet after 2 decades of bloodshed, the unthinkable happened. The US withdrew in defeat. How did it all go so wrong? Today we unravel the origins of this harrowing conflict, examining how a divided Vietnam and a misjudged war of ideology set the stage for America's greatest military failure. The roots of the Vietnam War lie in the collapse of French colonial rule. For nearly a century, Vietnam was under French control, but World War II weakened France's hold on its colonies. The rise of nationalist and communist movements, led by Ho Chi Minh, culminated in the First Indochina War. In 1954, after a humiliating defeat at the Battle of Dien Bien Phu, the French withdrew, and the Geneva Accords temporarily divided Vietnam along the 17th parallel. The North, under Ho Chi Minh, became a communist state aligned with the Soviet Union and China. The South, backed by the United States, remained under Emperor Bao Dai, though real power quickly shifted to Prime Minister Ngo Dinh. For the US, this wasn't just a regional issue, it was a battleground in the global fight against communism. The domino theory loomed large. If Vietnam fell, so would the rest of Southeast Asia. In the aftermath of the Geneva Accords, South Vietnam came under the leadership of Prime Minister Ngo Dinh, a staunch anti-communist who had the full backing of the United States. Diem's government was expected to stabilize South Vietnam and stand as a bulwark against the communist North, but Diem's rule quickly proved problematic. He marginalized the Buddhist majority while favoring the Catholic elite, exacerbating religious and social tensions. Rural farmers, the backbone of South Vietnam, found themselves ignored, taxed heavily, or forced into resettlement programs that alienated them further. In the north, Ho Chi Minh's government seized this opportunity to sow unrest in the south. In 1959, the communist leadership passed Resolution 15, endorsing armed rebellion as the means to overthrow Diem's regime. This resolution led to the birth of the Viet Cong, or the National Front for the Liberation of South Vietnam, a guerrilla force supplied and trained by the North. By the early 1960s, the Viet Cong began waging an insurgency marked by ambushes, sabotage, and propaganda campaigns. To counter this, the United States provided extensive military aid to the Army of the Republic of Vietnam, ARVN, South Vietnam's military force. However, the ARVN was ill-prepared for the unconventional tactics of the Viet Cong. The RVN, initially composed of around 150,000 troops, struggled with inadequate training, poor leadership, and low morale. American advisors attempted to address these deficiencies, but the lack of understanding of guerrilla warfare limited their success. The ARVN often found itself outmaneuvered by the Viet Cong, whose deep knowledge of Vietnam's dense jungles gave them a significant advantage. By 1960, the National Liberation Front, NLF, the political arm of the Viet Cong, consolidated its influence among South Vietnam's rural population. Backed by weapons and supplies transported along the Ho Chi Minh Trail, the NLF became a unifying force for anti-Diem sentiment. When John F. Kennedy assumed the presidency in 1961, Vietnam had already become a focal point of the Cold War. Kennedy inherited Eisenhower's commitment to South Vietnam and viewed the country as a linchpin in the fight against communism. By mid-1964, the Vietnam conflict was escalating. The Communist North, confident in its growing strength, increased its use of the Ho Chi Minh Trail to funnel troops and supplies into South Vietnam. Meanwhile, the United States, under President Lyndon B. Johnson, was grappling with how to respond decisively without appearing to provoke a broader conflict. The flashpoint came in the Gulf of Tonkin, a body of water off the coast of North Vietnam, where tensions between the US and the North reached a boiling point. On August 2nd, the USS Maddox, a US Navy destroyer, was conducting intelligence gathering operations in the Gulf as part of a mission known as De Soto patrols. These patrols were designed to monitor North Vietnamese activities and support covert South Vietnamese attacks on coastal targets, known as Operation Plan 34A. The Maddox was approached by 3 North Vietnamese torpedo boats from the 135th Torpedo Squadron. As the boats closed in, the Maddox fired warning shots. The North Vietnamese boats responded with torpedoes and machine gun fire. The Maddox, supported by US aircraft from the nearby carrier USS Ticonderoga, repelled the attack. No US personnel were harmed, and the Maddox sustained minimal damage. In contrast, 1 North Vietnamese boat was severely damaged and 2 others retreated. 2 days later, tensions escalated further. The Maddox, joined by the USS Turner Joy, reported another attack while patrolling the same waters. According to the ship's crews, North Vietnamese torpedo boats once again engaged them in a nighttime skirmish. Radar and sonar detected incoming torpedoes, prompting defensive maneuvers and a series of counterattacks. But this second incident has since been the subject of intense scrutiny and doubt. Declassified documents and first-hand accounts later revealed that bad weather, overzealous radar operators, and misinterpreted signals might have played a role. Some reports suggested there were no North Vietnamese boats in the area at all that night. Despite the ambiguity of the second incident, Johnson seized the moment. On August the 5th, he addressed the American people, declaring, "Repeated acts of violence against the armed forces of the United States must be met with a positive reply." The administration presented the Gulf of Tonkin events as unprovoked acts of aggression. This narrative helped secure overwhelming support in Congress for the Gulf of Tonkin resolution on August 7, 1964. This resolution granted President Johnson near unlimited authority to take all necessary measures to repel any armed attack against the forces of the United States and to prevent further aggression. It marked the beginning of America's direct military intervention in Vietnam, with the first major deployments of ground troops occurring in early 1965. The Gulf of Tonkin Incident was more than a spark. It was a carefully leveraged moment. Behind the scenes, Johnson's administration was already looking for a reason to escalate the conflict. The incidents, whether fully accurate or not, provided the perfect justification. For North Vietnam, the Gulf of Tonkin was a warning of America's determination to defend South Vietnam. For the United States, it was a declaration of intent, a signal to the world that it would not back down in its fight against communism. The Gulf of Tonkin had unlocked the door to a full-scale war. The stage was set. The United States, convinced of its technological and military superiority, would soon commit hundreds of thousands of troops to Vietnam. But Vietnam was no ordinary battlefield. How would the United States, with its vast arsenal, fare against an enemy that thrived on unconventional warfare? How would the United States' decision to escalate change the course of the war? What tactics would the Viet Cong and NVA deploy to turn the tide against overwhelming odds? The answers lie ahead in Part 2. Stay tuned as we dive into the full-scale war, the Tet Offensive, and the turning point that sealed America's fate in Vietnam. Thank you for watching Tales of History. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the past and learned something new about the events that shaped our world. If you found this video interesting, please give it a thumbs up and share it with others who love history as much as we do. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of our future episodes. Until next time, keep exploring the fascinating stories of history with us. And remember, history isn't just the past, it's the key to understanding our present and shaping our future.